Welcome to Biztech's Enterprise Technology Show. I'm Brian Fernandez, and with us today, we've got Asher Ling. He's the Chief Technology Officer and Managing Director for Singapore and Malaysia at Princeton Digital Group. Now, Princeton Digital Group, or PDG, is a leading data center developer and operator across six key digital economies in Asia, including China, Singapore, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Japan. Now, they have over 20 data centers across the region, supporting the growth of cloud and AI for global hyperscalers and enterprises. Now, to tell us more, welcome to the show, Asher.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yep.
Now, Asher, could you tell us a little bit more about Princeton Digital Group, its history, the big investors behind it as well, and then what do you do for the company?
Sure. Thank you, Brian. Princeton Digital Group, we kind of started about 7-8 years ago, and at that point, we really saw a potential to build a pan-Asia data center developer and operator, because at that point of time, as the cloud computing was taking off in the various markets in Asia, we saw that there was still a gap in terms of infrastructure provision to enable the internet to take off in a massive and scalable way where there is world-class standards, world-class operating standards, yet delivered and managed by local teams. So, Warburg Pincus, our largest investor, backed us when we started this business back then in 2018. And subsequently, we had Mubadala and the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund, and also Ontario Teachers Pension Plan jointly all invest into our business. Today, as you have called out, Brian, we now span 6 countries. We're headquartered in Singapore. Our data centers are in Singapore, in China, in Shanghai, Nanjing, in Greater Beijing, Langfang areas. In Indonesia, we have 6 data centers, 3 of them in Jakarta. We have 2 data centers now in India, in Mumbai, Navi Mumbai. In Japan, we went in about 2 years ago, and that's 2 data centers that we have master plan for. The first one is already coming up and going live very early part of next year. And our most recent foray was into Malaysia, Brian, when we saw the AI growth really take place, and Singapore was going through a moratorium. We were guided at seeing how we could increase our capacity in this nearer to this part of town. And we bought 31.5 acres of land about 15-16 months ago, and lo and behold, suddenly we grew and built the fastest and the largest data center campuses in Johor, right here in our backyard. It was really exciting, really fascinating time, and it was only possible with this support that we have had from our investors. Yeah.
Okay, and you've also then announced a $5 billion expansion. Talk to us about that, because obviously you are born and bred in Asia. The funding has come from global sources, but literally you're an Asian company, your headquarters in Singapore. Walk us through this next stage of expansion.
Thank you, Brian. So two points, if I could unpack that question. First is, you're absolutely correct. We're Asian born and bred. Our operating model have from the day one been a headquarters, which is very international. So we have a very multinational C-suite and a platform company that's headquartered in Singapore. But each of the markets and regions we are in are led by a local managing director who also has a management team. And we strongly believe that the local management teams are empowered to execute and deliver the product for our clients, which we would then have strategic relationships both at the group level and also at the local level. With regard to our expansion, everything I talked about just now in terms of our presence was what happened up till very recently. We just announced, Brian, as you have noted, an expansion of 500 megawatts of powered-ready land. We have acquired land across Malaysia, Indonesia, and India, which would allow us to almost increase by 50% of the size that we have. So we're currently about 1 gigawatt, in terms of our portfolio, and with that 500 megawatt pipeline of powered land, capacity, that's going to bring us close to about 1.5 gigawatts. So it's 1,500 megawatts of a portfolio across Asia.
Asher, these numbers are staggering from one company, let alone the fact that the expansion has been staggering across the region. I mean, if you look at JB now, Johor Bahru in Malaysia, which is literally a regional hotbed, which you've just established your center, you're looking at about 50 projects that are either been approved and probably 20 plus already completed. Looks like a very, very competitive business to be in. Walk us through what is everyone seeing, and is there perhaps really rapid capacity expansion at a very short period of time? Is the market able to absorb this capacity?
I think, Brian, that's a very astute observation, and let's unpack that a little bit. I think first and foremost, 24 months ago, honestly, there's probably very few data centers, if any, in Johor. Most of the data centers we see in Malaysia are centered around in KL or Cyberjaya area.
Yes.
And most of the enterprise customers or even the large international tech companies were looking at KL or the greater KL as a market. Now, what really initiated Johor as part of the conversation was really first of all, a data center moratorium as a result for Singapore's development on its sustainable plan, which is called the Green Plan, and the need for a tactical pause to evaluate how Singapore can and enable further growth of digital infrastructure while being sustainably responsible to our global commitments to the Paris Accord. That has led companies like myself in PDG to think about developing a strategy called SG Plus, which literally is like, Singapore is not that big, as you know. We just draw, a circle of maybe 50 to 100 kilometers around Singapore. And we say, hey, is there any interesting partnership or land or resources that's available where we can look into? And this is only because we have always seen a very strong partnership between the governments of Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. In fact, even as early as the 70s and the 80s, these three regions' government have come together to do a trilateral kind of partnership and name this and coin this Sejori, Singapore,
yes,
Riau, and Johor. So Sejori, in our context, sometimes we call it SG Plus, but it really is these three economic zones, each having its own strengths and weaknesses, but when come together, having a very strong complementary effect to make the entire greater region very attractive. Now, when we came into Johor and bought 31.5 acres of land, Brian, it was an intention of sustaining this overflow of business that we are seeing in Singapore. We have presently 2 data centers in Singapore. Vacancy level is very, very low, so supply is very constrained. And we were hoping to support some of our customers who are already very happy with us, but looking to grow their business. And that is what we're talking about generally, the cloud computing growth, which is around 12 to 15% CAGR as per our expected growth. But what happened, Brian, and I'm sure the audience will also experience personally, is about 18 months ago, suddenly we got hit by this generational technology called Gen AI, which literally transformed our lives, right? I'm sure everyone would have at least attempted to communicate and ask the ChatGPT some question and get some interesting answer. Or I'm sure, Brian, you have
absolutely.
And the thing about it is that was really a teaser to the capabilities of Gen AI and machine learning. Now, with that, obviously, there's a lot of further developments that the very smart brains around the world are working on. But very quickly, these very large tech companies around the world are looking for locations on the map, on a global map, to land the compute, the brain. And these are very large compute energy requiring facilities. And they are and they require quite a lot of features and characteristics to be able to be constructed. And through that process, Johor suddenly became very attractive because, number one, there is land. Number two, Peninsular Malaysia does have an excess generation capacity, fairly decent transmission, and tenaga is fairly good if you think about it. And third, the Malaysia government, both at the federal level and at the state level, are extremely supportive of new investments coming in and this digital transformation. And number four, access to renewable energy. Malaysia is blessed with natural resources to have access to that. So all these conditions together, coupled with proximity to Singapore and good connectivity, made Johor extremely attractive. So suddenly that boom just happened and everyone converged here.
Now, Asher, can I also add one more thing? And again, folks like you and me are from the tech business for many years. One of the biggest things, I think, from a Singapore perspective was also the fact that with cloud computing, the regulatory framework around where the data resides changed. And therefore, data could reside in a different geographical environment, which perhaps from the time that we were in tech, it had to be physically on-prem. And that was a big difference, particularly in things like financial services.
So I think that this is a very, very deep topic, Brian. If we were to unpack it, we'll probably need a lot more time. But I think you're absolutely correct. I think the way one looks at how the global internet infrastructure, which the global public cloud infrastructure is deployed on, it has been evolving over the years. And it constantly is evolving. And now with AI driving the next wave of growth, it is constantly evolving again. And a lot of the traditional ways of how we're looking at designing infrastructure has to rapidly change and evolve, as per the demand for the technologies and the data that we're generating and consume. So it's a very fascinating thing, although there continues to be debate on the need for data privacy and data protection and the need for residency. But at the same time, we're seeing in the ASEAN framework discussions, talks of digital economy, more bilateral, multilateral conversations between the government. And I think it's a step in a very positive direction, and we're in a very exciting time, especially for ASEAN.
Now, Asher, one of the key things that people don't realize is on the surface, it seems that data centers don't need a lot of people anymore. So you actually, and technology has changed quite dramatically. A few months ago, I went to my first newfangled data center being built in Johor, not one of yours. And one of the things I noticed was how data centers now have solid floors. All the environment we are used to is raised floors. All the cabling is below. Now it's all on top. Walk us through the differences now in terms of the impact that companies like you have, not only from a sustainability issue, because obviously lower power consumption, lower water consumption now compared to traditional technologies, but also the impact, the positive impact that you have in terms of talent in each of your markets.
Oh, I think, Brian, you literally touched on so many different topics, and
Yes.
let me start with talent. Brian, talent is extremely close to my heart. When we first came into Malaysia, literally, we had no Malaysian employees. We started the Sdn Bhd, and then, but I told my team, just like the MO that we have, the modus operandi we have is, I dream that we have data centers that can be designed by Malaysians, built by Malaysians, and operated by Malaysians. And that was the vision we set out to do. And very quickly we found the talent, we attracted them, we convinced them of the vision that we have. We told them that, hey, I bought the land, I have the plan, and we have a lot of colleagues who are here in Singapore who culturally also understand how to work in Malaysia, but family is here, right? So they could cross the causeway to give some support and give some guidance and sharing. But we really wanted to train up and hire and build that local management team. And lo and behold, because of the culture that we have and the opportunity that we brought, very quickly I've put together a very strong engineering team. And that team was able to be on the ground, really together with my Singapore team, really rapidly constructing a 400 over 1,000 square foot greenfield data center in 12 months. That's phenomenal. Never done before. I've never done something of that scale before. It's phenomenal. But the camaraderie that I see in the team on the ground is amazing. Now, at the same time, before my data center goes live, I need to build my operations team. I need to find operations talent who understands how to operate large-scale data centers or mission-critical environments. But truth of the matter is, such talent doesn't exist in Malaysia right now because we never, Malaysian had, or even in Singapore for that matter, never had the opportunity to manage or even build and operate such large-scale infrastructure. So what do? Well, I thought, where do we find talent in Malaysia where they have experience, 20 years experience managing large-scale plants? I think Penang is a good place. Went to Penang, where a lot of the large, fabrication plants are. Look for some, experienced, very talented, and say, hey, look, would you relocate? Come to Johor. Come and run the facility here and relocate, literally bring your family down and relocate here. And at the same time, I was looking at hiring more and more Johorians, train them up. So this allowed me to sustain my first wave and build a team that's able to run the data center I have right now that's live and operational. Now, but Brian, that's not enough. The future just begun.
Yes.
What do we do? What do we do about tomorrow? What about, we're not that old, but we're not that young.
Yes.
And this data center business is, when we start this business, we intend it to be for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So we need the next generation to come. But how do we ensure that there's such talent? So immediately I got one of my local Malaysian teams to say, hey, reach out to the universities. So actually right now we're already working and partnering with UTM, which is not too far from our data center. We've talked to them, we're like, hey, let's do a partnership program. Send me some of your great students. We have a graduate engineering traineeship program. So right now, as we speak, I have two graduate students from UTM actually doing hands-on on-job training. Not just apprenticeship, internship, 3 months, no, 18 months with me, literally hands-on life experiencing what it feels like to be a data center operator. And what we hope to do is to partner with the state. The state, Johor State, is extremely supportive of these education programs. We're working with the broader ecosystem, our clients, our contractors, our suppliers, vendor equipment partners to say, hey, let's come together, let's develop education programs. Let's partner with the universities, the vocational schools. Let's develop syllabus to train the next generation of talent and attract them to come into this industry. Come to Malaysia, come to Johor, get a job, be well paid, and build a career here in Johor.
So, Asher, we've just talked about a template in one country. Are you replicating that across all your various markets?
Absolutely, absolutely. Similarly, everything I talked about is the same playbook of how we've done in India. About 4 years ago, we've been in India. Well, we started the business probably 5, 6 years ago. We want to do something in India, but same thing in Navi Mumbai. Only about 3, 4 years ago, we managed to secure the power land. We started the construction of a data center, and we realized that we need to get talent to come in. Now, India has quite an abundance of engineering talent, but we felt the need to also have a graduate engineering traineeship program over there. So we've brought in quite a number of students over there, brought them on board, and these are really bright next generation. And when we bring them on board, they then get the hands-on experience of what it means to actually design and actually build a data center. And eventually, they may even say, we want to go over and be an operator. Same thing we're doing in Singapore. We're working with ITE, and we're talking to the universities and the IHLs to say, what are the next generation designs that we can look at? Because I think data centers are digital infrastructure, which will enable us for the next generations. And technology is what it takes to make the world a much better place to live in. So we just have to invest in the next generation.
Okay, Asher, if I'm a CIO, and you've got all these data centers to choose from, there's so many operators, global players, new players like you. Why should I pick your company? Why should I pick Princeton Digital Group compared to all the others? What's your secret sauce? Is it price? Is it quality? What is it?
So I think, Brian, the first answer to that, if you are a CIO, the question you need to ask yourself is, do you want an on-prem solution, or do you want a cloud-based solution or a private cloud solution? So think through that first, right? If you're still thinking of an on-prem within your office building, I think you need to seriously ask yourself why. It is the least efficient way to do it. It's very costly to manage your own IT servers, and your infrastructure will never have the same level of robustness and resiliency that a professional firm can do for you. I strongly believe, and I think a lot of my peers in the data center industry believe, that the best way to do it is either go all the way public cloud or a form of a hybrid where you have a private cloud, a hybrid together with public cloud infrastructure. The capacity is highly scalable and flexible. And actually what we do at Princeton Digital Group is we definitely serve the very large cloud service providers because we're building these physical buildings and power infrastructures to support these large hyperscalers, which are actually serving these CIOs. Now, of course, for an enterprise CIO who, for example, a bank who feels like they still want to ensure that they have control over their IT equipments, they can come to us. I do provide co-location services for enterprise customers where they would take an entire suite and they can put their own servers and racks with me. And the reason they choose us is because we're a trusted brand. We have only a few years here, but the professionals we have in the whole company have been in the industry collectively for more than centuries. And you want trusted brand names, reputable brand names, people that you know you can look at the eye that at 3 a.m. in the morning, they are worrying about ensuring there's power and cooling to your servers. And that's all I do. That's all I think about. I live and breathe that. I don't know anything else. I only care about that.
So Asher, on that note, it's been a fascinating conversation. I think it's really been enlightening. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
I think the final thought is that the world is really rapidly changing. And I think the AI ML trend is unstoppable. It will happen. It will not. What we need to do as a global community, as a global village, is really to come together and say, how can we grow sustainably? Because the truth of the matter is, every compute, even whatever we're doing here right now, Brian, takes up compute power.
Yes.
And the compute power goes into data centers, and data centers requires energy. Now, one may say that, oh, it is the data center's responsibility or the cloud service provider or the hyperscaler's responsibility to offset the carbon footprint. But truth of the matter is all of us are responsible for that. But it can't be achieved by a single company itself. I think it requires the entire global village to come together, work hand in hand to acknowledge this challenge, and then all of us play our role. And data center industry players, myself and PDG itself, we're very willing to take a leadership role in working with the local governments, with the federal government, working with local partners to source for renewable energy sources to power our data centers. But we need our clients, we need our partners, vendors, ecosystem players to all come together and say we have a common goal. We need a sustainable, greener future for our next generation, because the alternative is not tenable and not acceptable.
On that note, Asher, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you, Brian.
Now, we've been speaking to Asher Ling. He's the Chief Technology Officer and Managing Director for Singapore and Malaysia at Princeton Digital Group. I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to the Biztech Enterprise Technology Show. This interview will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.